Good day to you and welcome to another Paddocks Club video tutorial. Today I want to talk about points of order, what they are, when they should be raised and how they should be dealt with. A point of order is a tool which an owner in a general meeting can use to draw attention to a breach of the Act or the scheme's rules, a breach or irregularity in procedure, the irrelevance or continued repetition of a speaker, or the breaching of established practices. It can be used at any time during a meeting, including interrupting a speaker or the chairperson, but it must be a valid point. You can't raise a point of order because you disagree with what has been said or as a strategy to interrupt a speaker. So how do you do it when it is appropriate? You stand up and say, on a point of order, Mr. or Mrs. Chairman, and the chairperson must then acknowledge that and allow you briefly to state your point. You can't argue the issue at that point. You're only entitled to make your point and ask the chairperson to make a ruling. So let me give you some examples. So starting first with legal issues, you could say, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the proposed resolution contravenes prescribed Management Rule 33, so this meeting doesn't have the power to approve this proposed work because it's actually an improvement to the common property and the due process required under that rule hasn't been followed. Another example would be, no, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the Act requires a special resolution before we can decide to sue the developer. Let me look at things that aren't legal in nature, but relate to meeting procedure. You might say, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the speaker is no longer dealing with the issue that we're actually debating, or the speaker is repeating points that he or she has already made. You might say, the specific facts the speaker is giving are incorrect, but please note that if you do this, you must be able to prove that that is correct. You might say, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the speaker's time has expired. That would only be in the context where the meeting had agreed that each person would speak for 5 minutes or something. You might say on a point of order that the language the speaker is using is offensive. But here, please note that you have to allow a reasonable degree of robustness. That's expected at meetings. You don't have to tolerate swearing or seriously derogatory remarks, but you can't be oversensitive in that regard. And finally, my last example is, on a point of order, the meeting no longer has a quorum because Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones have just left, and we simply don't have enough people to continue this meeting. So when must a point of order be raised? Well, not after the meeting. That's too late. Immediately the alleged breach or irregularity occurs. That's why it is allowed to interrupt a speaker, even if the speaker is the chair. What must the chairperson do when the point of order is raised? Well, immediately stop the proceedings, including anyone who's speaking, and deal with the point. Now, there are 3 possible ways that a chairperson could deal with the point. They could say, no, that's not a valid point of order. Secondly, they could say, well, I accept your point of order, and therefore, in this instance, the chairperson must, for example, adjourn the meeting if no quorum exists, or continue the meeting but take steps to correct the breach or irregularity. An example of continuing the meeting would be to refuse to allow further debate of a proposed resolution that the meeting is not empowered to make, or to caution a speaker against making inappropriate comments, or draw attention of the meeting to corrected facts. The third possibility is that the chair may reject the thing. The chairperson may say, I don't accept your point of order. And in this case, the chair will continue with the meeting as if there hadn't been an interruption. So can a point of order be challenged and debated by the meeting? Well, the chairperson acts in a quasi-judicial role, so the informed decision on a point is final unless the objector takes the matter to a higher authority, such as the High Court, or to the Community Scheme Ombuds Service, where an adjudicator would review it. If a person in a meeting believes that the ruling given by the chair in response to a point of order they have raised is incorrect, then they should object to the ruling, asking the chair to ensure that the point of order, the ruling, and his or her objection to the ruling has been noted in the minutes. And that's really the last point. These sort of things aren't normally recorded in the minutes, although they can be, but if the chair has rejected a point of order and the owner has objected, then this certainly must be noted in the minutes. Thank you for joining me, and if you have any questions, let's deal with them in the discussion forum.